Okay, guys, what we got here is small block Ford 185. I believe it's Promaxx. I cannot guarantee that because the person that sent it to me wasn't 100% sure, but from everything I've gathered, I'm pretty sure it's a Promaxx head. That is an completely unported 185. It comes with a 202 valve. Here's our flows on here. Really not bad for a 185. I actually ported it was 186.5 cc's. I used the modified valve. It was back cut. So the flows are actually quite good stock. Okay, this is what it looks like with a little bit of work, and I mean a little bit of work. I basically took some airspeed numbers on the stocker, and I did my quickie where I think it needs to be enlarged. The short side radius is really good. Whoever they copied this port from, the original was done quite well. Okay, so this is our ported. Okay, I want to get in the habit of putting pluses and minuses where we're up and down. Now, as typical with my porting, I lose a little bit of low lift, which is arguably good, depending upon the size of your cam. Okay? And at 600, we're almost 300 CFM. Now, we need to have a conversation with small block Ford guys and how much CFM you really need. Because Chevy guys are bad. Ford guys are out of their mind. Sorry, guys. You're nuts. You can't take a cylinder head like this and throw it on a 306 and expect it to have great manners around town. It's going to be tough to do. Okay? 99% of you guys would be better off with a set of ported out E7s. And I'm not saying that just because I poured out E7s. Believe me, fixing up a set of these is absolute cake compared to doing a set of E7s. Let's pull out the flow sheet from a set of E7s. Okay, this is a set of E7s similar to the ones I did for David Vizard. These have a back cut valve. Okay, the back cut valve does not top out as much. The non-back cut valve tops out around 231, which is about, I was getting 234, the ones I sent to DV. These have a full intake boss still in them, which is why they're a little bit lower than the ones I sent David. But they're going to be on a streetcar, so they need the support. Okay, take a look, right? Relatively close, relatively close, relatively close. Okay, the bigger port starts taking over at 2.25. Not bad, not bad. Okay, the bigger port really starts to move around 350, 400. 400, you got a nice amount of air coming through that. It's actually quite good. Right? Well, that's after I poured it too. But even unported is 249, really not bad. Okay? But you got to remember, this is a way smaller port. Even ported out, that's probably not even 150 cc's. Okay, so the velocity through the port is much better than 190. And we're gonna get guys that say, "Oh, I have AFR 220s on my 306 and it runs great." Well, by the basic geometry of a 302, it doesn't have a huge amount of low end torque to begin with. That's one of the reasons the Mustang GTs had that massive long runner intake manifold that flowed terribly, by the way. The cylinder heads barely flowed 150 on the intake port, and the intake manifold was nowhere even close to that. I have one that's completely done up, and I think the best I can get out of it was like 160. And I cut the thing in half and did all kinds of work to it. I'll have to show that to you someday. But If you know what you're doing, these little bit lower flows here with way higher velocity will beat this car. Just letting you know. Okay, the stock exhaust. Yes, it's got 4 holes for different style headers, which is really nice, actually, right? They're blind, which is good. The port has actually got a pretty decent shape. Let's see how it flows. Okay, stock. Not bad. See all these P's? It's got a pulsation in it on the manometer, right in the mid-range. I got news for you. The ported one was no better. So I definitely have to change that. But completely stock. Well, it did have a modified exhaust valve. I had a radius on the leading edge of that exhaust valve, and it was textured. So it does flow better than a standard 1.6 valve. But still, you got 204 with a big pipe. Small pipe doesn't fit. The exhaust port's too big. And ported out, 220.2 with the big pipe. Okay. Okay, added in the positives and minuses. Hit or miss with where I ported it out. Now you have to understand, I was given this job for a friend who's going to be taking this head. He wants to do CNC of this head, but he doesn't want me to touch the valve job. So not touching the valve job, that's what you got. And of course I want to try to keep the port as small as I can, so I have the velocity up, because it's relatively big already for a small block Ford. Now, of course, as soon as you go into stroker motors, it's a whole different ball of wax. Or if you really start turning some RPMs, that's when you can really start using a head like this. And 300 CFM, you can make a good amount of power out of something like this. Let's take a look at the ported exhaust. Okay. Really didn't do that much to it. Kind of took some of the, put a little shape around the boss. I don't think I widened it much, maybe a little bit on the cylinder wall side. It probably could use quite a bit more on that. Okay, the unported exhaust actually has a pretty decent shape. That huge scallop inside the port, I'm not really sure why. There's a lot of manufacturers that do that. That's actually too damn big right there. Okay, even after you port it, you can still see that. It's just, why do they do that? I don't know. They did use a nice radius, just like Charlie does, right? Off the 45, radius into the throat, which is really nice. I like the way they did that, which is one of the reasons it works as well as it does. Okay, and the ported exhaust, you know, the chamber was done a little bit. I didn't go crazy. I just did a little bit on the chamber. Did not touch the valve job at all. All right, and I changed the curves inside the port a little bit. Really, you know, 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes worth of work. I mean, just changed the shape a little bit because it was my first cut. So after I study the airspeeds and so forth, then I'll go on from there. Okay, the intake port stock looks pretty darn good. The valve job really is not bad. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least five angles on it. Now that's either here or there. I mean, if it's 5 angles is done right, it's great. If 5 angles is not done right, it's not really going to help you, right? The short side radius was done quite well. The floor is angled the right direction. Right? It's laid back quite a bit. It's very wide. So whoever design they copied was a pretty good design. What's the problem with something like this is right out of the box it's pretty darn good. So it's tough to make it better. Okay, you can see the ported port. Come on. Alrighty. The valve job hasn't been touched. Yeah, you can see where I did a little bit of work in the chamber. Okay. Really did not take out a lot of metal because the port only went up from a 186.5 to a 190. Okay, so that's not bad. That's still using the stock valve job. All right, you can see the numbers on the bottom. The guides overall are tight. They would need a hone. But the valve job really isn't that terrible. The exhausts, I think the worst one was 2 thousandths out. And the intakes, the worst was 4 thousandths out. Which for a Chinese head, now if these are Promaxx, and I think they are, they get their castings from China, but they do their own valve job here, which is why it's as good as it is. Okay, the reason the guides are tight is because they get a guide which is basically the right size, and by the time you bang them into the head, it distorts enough that you run out of clearance. So they really, just like any head from any manufacturer, buy it bare, have somebody that knows what they're doing go through the guides and touch the valve job up so it's good, it's right on the money. You don't have to worry about twisting the valve, 6,000 times a second. I don't think a lot of people understand that. That's where that whole hardened seat mess originally started. Okay, it was because the guide started to wear, and then the valve's hitting it at an angle, and it's burning up the seats. Okay, the chamber overall has got a pretty decent shape to it. Not bad. The intake bowl is pretty darn good stock, and the casting has got a nice finish to it. It really isn't bad. And there's the ported chamber, the ported intake. You can see it's just roughed out. I changed a few areas and took some of the crap out of it, and that's it. FYI, Promaxx doesn't pay me. Come to think of it, nobody pays me. My own boss don't even want to pay me because I'm a troublemaker, I know. All right, guys. I thought somebody would like to take a look at these. Overall, I hate to send any money overseas, but it's really not a bad casting. I really think the American manufacturers should be able to stomp this, but they don't seem to put any effort. Thanks.